You stand up, your name gets called, and before you say a single word, your hands are already shaking. Your heart pounds, your palms sweat, your mouth goes dry. You haven't even spoken yet, but your body is already in a full-blown emergency. Here's the strange part. There is no emergency. No fire, no danger, just a room full of people looking at you. But the real answer to why this happens is far stranger than nerves or bad luck. It reaches back hundreds of thousands of years into a world where being looked at by a group could actually kill you. Think about that for a second. Your body doesn't know the difference between a job interview and a life or death moment on the savanna. As far as your nervous system is concerned, they're the same event. That's not a metaphor, it's biology. In 1872, Charles Darwin published a book most people have never heard of. It wasn't about finches or fossils. It was called The Expression of the Emotions in Man and Animals. In it, Darwin described something he found across nearly every culture he studied. When humans feel exposed, judged, or watched, their bodies react the same way. Blood rushes to the face, muscles tense, the skin flushes or pales. He called it an involuntary signal, something the body does whether you want it to or not. Darwin's theory was simple, and it still holds up today. These reactions weren't random, they were inherited, passed down because at some point in human history they helped someone survive. To understand why, you have to picture your ancestors differently than you probably do, not as cave dwellers hiding from lions, as members of a small group, 50 people, maybe 150, every single one of them known by name, every one of them essential. In that world, there was no anonymity, no blending into a crowd of strangers, no slipping out the back and starting over in another town. If the group turned against you, exile wasn't just embarrassing, it was often fatal. No group meant no food sharing, no protection, no mate, no future. A person cast out from the tribe rarely lasted long alone against predators, weather, and starvation, so a strange kind of pressure built into the human brain over thousands of generations. Not a fear of predators exactly, a fear of disapproval. And that fear had to be fast, faster than reasoning, faster than words. Neuroscientist Joseph LeDoux spent decades mapping how fear actually works in the brain. His research pointed to a small almond-shaped structure called the amygdala. It sits deep in the brain, buried beneath layers of newer, more logical tissue, and it doesn't wait for permission to act. The moment it detects a threat, real or perceived, it fires off a stress response before the thinking part of your brain even catches up. Here's the key detail. LeDoux found that the amygdala doesn't distinguish well between types of threat. A predator crouched in tall grass, a rival staring you down, a crowd of judging eyes at the front of a conference room. To this ancient alarm system, they can all trigger the same reaction: racing heart, shaking hands, tunnel vision, shallow breath, which means when you stand at the front of a room, your amygdala isn't thinking about your presentation. It isn't reading your slides or grading your delivery. It's running a much older program, one built for a world where every member of the group had a vote on whether you stayed or went. But why hands specifically? Why not just a racing heart and leave it there? Psychologist Arne Öhman spent years studying what he called prepared fears. Not fears you learn through personal experience like touching a hot stove once and avoiding it forever. Prepared fears are different. They're fears your brain seems to arrive with already installed, tuned by evolution before you were even born. Snakes, spiders, angry faces, social rejection. Öhman ran experiments showing people images of faces in a crowd, neutral faces, happy faces, and angry, hostile ones. Over and over, the results were the same. Humans detect the angry face faster than any other, faster than they can even consciously register what they've seen, as if the brain runs a constant background scan for danger in expressions. His conclusion was blunt. Some fears aren't really about logic at all. They're leftover software, tuned by generations of ancestors who didn't survive because they froze under group scrutiny or missed the warning signs of a hostile face at the wrong moment. The shaking hands, the trembling voice, the sudden dryness in your throat, they're not weakness, they're your body preparing for the two oldest options it knows, fight or flee. Except in a conference room or a classroom or a wedding toast, you can't fight your audience and you can't run for the door. So the energy has nowhere to go. It just sits there in your hands, in your voice, in the pit of your stomach, with nowhere left to release. Here's what makes this even stranger. Surveys and studies on social anxiety have repeatedly found that the fear of public speaking often outranks the fear of death itself. People, when asked directly, report being more afraid of speaking in front of a group than of dying. Think about how bizarre that is on paper. Somewhere, someone is more terrified of a 5-minute presentation than of ceasing to exist. And yet it becomes completely logical once you see it through the lens of your ancestors. Death was one bad day. Social exile was something slower and, in evolutionary terms, arguably worse. A slow, permanent unraveling of everything that kept you fed, protected, and alive. Your nervous system did the math a long time ago, long before you were born, long before language even existed in its modern form, and it decided that being judged by the tribe was the bigger threat. Not because death didn't matter, but because in a world without hospitals, without money, without strangers to fall back on, losing your place in the group often meant death anyway, just delayed and drawn out. Researchers studying small-scale societies, the kind that most closely resemble how humans lived for most of our history, have documented something striking. In these groups, public shaming was often the primary tool used to enforce cooperation. There was no privacy. No door to close on your embarrassment. Every mistake happened in public, with consequences that rippled through your entire support system. Now think about how different your world actually is. You can fail in front of a room today and walk out the door 5 minutes later, job intact, family intact, food supply intact, but your amygdala didn't get the memo. It's still running code, written for a world with no safety net and no way back in once you were pushed out. So what do you do with all of this? Standing there with your notes shaking in your hand, wondering if anyone can see your knees trembling under the podium? You stop fighting your body and you start translating it. That racing heart isn't telling you that you're in danger. It's telling you that you're in front of people who matter, doing something that matters. It's the same system that once kept your ancestors bonded to their group tightly enough to survive together, alert enough to notice a shift in the room, responsive enough to adjust before it was too late. The shaking hands aren't proof you're failing. They're proof the oldest, most protective part of your brain is paying very close attention. It's doing its job. It has simply never been told that the stakes today are different from the stakes 100,000 years ago. And here's the twist almost nobody tells you. The audience isn't watching for your mistakes nearly as closely as you think they are. Most of them are sitting there, quietly replaying their own worst moments, wondering if anyone noticed when their voice cracked, when their hands trembled, when their face went red during their own turn at the front of the room. Everyone in that room is carrying the same ancient alarm system. Everyone. The person in the front row who looks completely calm, the person checking their phone, the person nodding along. Every one of them has stood where you're standing, felt what you're feeling, and quietly hoped no one else could tell, which means the fear you feel standing at the front isn't a personal flaw, it's a shared inheritance, a signal passed down from 100,000 campfires saying this moment matters, this group matters, don't get this wrong, you can't switch the alarm off completely. Darwin couldn't, LeDoux's research subjects couldn't, Unman's couldn't either, but you can understand it, and understanding changes what the shaking means. It stops being a sign that you don't belong up there and starts being evidence of exactly how much your brain still believes belonging is worth protecting. Tonight, when you feel your hands shake before you speak, or tomorrow at the next interview, the next toast, the next presentation, remember what's actually happening underneath the surface. It's not stage fright, not really. It's not a flaw in your character, and it's not evidence that you're less capable than the people watching you. Notice, too, what happens after the moment passes. The shaking stops, the heartbeat slows. Within minutes, your body stands back down from the alert it sounded, ready to fire again the next time you're seen or judged. You don't have to like the feeling, but you can stop treating it as evidence against you. The next time you feel it rising, the tight throat, the trembling hands, the sudden awareness of every eye in the room, try naming it for what it actually is. Not weakness, not a flaw, just an old, loyal system, doing exactly what it was built to do, in a world that asked something very different of it than the one you live in now. It's your ancestors, still watching the group, still trying to keep you inside it.